This is the heartbeat of human services, a peek into the inspiring stories of our community and all things DHS. Join us.
Hi, I'm your host, Janice Slagle, and today we're going to be talking about child and family team meetings. These meetings are held whenever a decision needs to be made that affects a child in foster care. And we're going to be talking to a trained facilitator today, Layne Wiebe, who is a social worker with the Department of Human Services. Hey there, Layne.
Hi, thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah. Before I start asking you questions about CFTM, I just want to acknowledge that internally we did a campaign to try to come up with a name for our podcast. And we got over 40 names suggested, and yours was chosen, right?
So the heartbeat of human services, I feel like a lot of times people just recognize our building or just the inner workings of things. But ultimately, we're all human. We want to make sure that we have DHS as a human place where we're trying to connect with other people and help them out however we can. So just felt kind of fitting, and this place really does have a heartbeat. So
I like that.
It's cool to keep people updated.
That was great. So congratulations. We're glad you gave us a great idea.
Thanks.
So so tell me, what does CFTM stand for?
Sure. So CFTM stands for Child and Family Team Meeting.
Okay. And so when does that happen? When do we have one of those?
So that can happen at lots of different times for lots of different reasons. So typically we just, the easy answer is that we have them whenever we either need to make a decision or we have some things that we need to discuss with the team. So we kind of bring everyone together, talk about it as a team, and then figure out how we're going to move forward with our next steps.
So who would be included in a meeting like that?
So like the name says, child and family teams. So we want to bring to the table everyone who has input for the family. So a lot of times it will be relatives, the kids are invited, foster parents or therapists or school personnel, basically anyone who has a voice that they want to share or a perspective or can help to make a decision for us.
And the biological family as well.
Yes.
Right. So that's really important. And do we have these team meetings at every step along the family's involvement with our agency, or?
Yeah. So our hope is that we can do one when the children first come into care, just to kind of give some transparency about what the process is going to look like. Talk about if the kids have any needs or services that we need to make sure to meet. We'll also talk about the parents' experience with the court process and their case plan and kind of what's expected of them. And then just kind of make a plan for the future. So that's the first one, called the initial CFTM. And then we have them all along the way whenever we need to make a decision, whether that's reviewing the case plan or talking about a placement change, maybe to a new foster home, or talking about upcoming court recommendations, just kind of everything along the way that we feel like the team needs to get together for.
That's great. So I have been involved with IEPs because I have a son with special needs. And I recall feeling completely intimidated as a parent in one of those meetings. And I wonder, do you think that the biological families initially feel a little bit of that when they come to these meetings?
Yeah, so we try to make it as welcoming and comforting as possible. We try not to use a lot of abbreviations and language that's confusing. We really do want to explain the process in a way that the parents are going to understand and feel comfortable. Also, we do ask them if there's anyone that they want to invite, if there's anyone that they feel like would be supportive to them, or anyone that they'd be comfortable having in the meeting, so that, they kind of have that person to sit next to them and ask questions for them if they forget or things like that.
Yeah, that's good. Do people take you up on that, like pastors or teachers?
Yeah, they do. We have had some clergy members come. We've also just had my neighbor wants to come, or someone that I maybe had a relationship in the past that we've kind of lost contact, but I want to kind of strengthen that relationship. So yeah, we definitely have family support.
So do you find that when you sit down at this sort of roundish table or square or something like that, and you explain the rules at the beginning of how does it work? So what are some of the rules you explain as you start these meetings?
Yeah, so the rules just kind of frame how we can have a good conversation. We know that there are sometimes difference of opinions or conflict or things. We're just having really tough and heavy conversations. So the point of that is to just make sure everyone's on the same page. We're all kind of playing by the same guidelines and having a good conversation. A lot of them are just kind of reminding people that we do want to have an open and honest and direct conversation. That's the point of bringing everyone together so we can really talk about those things. We also have a rule that's not blaming or shaming. I know it's really easy to kind of get stuck in the past, but that's not our goal. We want to move forward. So another thing is that it is okay to disagree, but it does need to be within the limits of respect. And then the other thing is just kind of reminding people that the meetings are confidential. So we're not just sharing all the information that was discussed there. The participants get a copy of the notes, but other than that, it's not really shared outside.
That's great. So do you think that makes people feel a little more comfortable knowing, okay, this is confidential and I have some boundaries. I can't just go yelling if I'm not happy about something, right?
Yeah, I think so. And really, like if things start to get a little bit out of hand or something like that, we can refer back to those. Like, hey, remember we talked about this in the beginning, like this isn't a place for blaming or shaming, or sometimes it's like families have had a lot of hard history that they want to bring up, but that's not our goal in the meeting. Our goal is to kind of focus on the issues at hand and then figure out how we can move forward all together as like a team of support for the kids and the family.
Have you found that the trauma-based understanding has changed how you do CFTMs, or have you always incorporated that thinking?
Yeah, so we went through SOP, Safety Organized Practice, and that kind of, I think that did shift a little bit about how social workers feel about making decisions within cases and kind of what they feel comfortable as far as realistic plans that we can come up with in the meeting. And then we also try to just kind of incorporate some of those things into meetings, like talking about circles of support and like who really can we bring into your circle so that when we leave the case, hopefully when we're not involved with your family anymore, how can you guys move forward? So I think we definitely have shifted our thinking in trying to make sure that it really is based on the family that's in front of us instead of just like that family is just the same as every other family.
They're all so unique, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely.
Is there a story or a CFTM that you recall where you just left going, oh, I'm so glad that worked out really well?
Yeah. So one of our types of CFTMs are reunification. So basically, we're just essentially kind of tying up the loose ends. We have a court hearing coming up where the recommendation is to close the case or is to reunify. We're just kind of making sure everyone's on the same page. Everyone knows what to expect. So those, obviously, the parents have been successful. They've done everything. We're now making a plan to get the kids back in the home or to even close the case. So those CFTMs are always super fun because it's just a lot of like congratulating and offering ongoing support and just acknowledging that the parents did put in a lot of hard
success.
Work. Yeah.
So, and just reunification means that someone, we had their children in our care and they worked through all the obstacles they had. And they're getting their children back in their home, right?
Exactly.
Okay, just so people know what that means. Yeah, that's great. So are there, I'm sure there are stories that things didn't go so well. Like what are some obstacles you have faced in CFTMs?
Yeah, just as many of those good meetings there are those other tough meetings. A lot of the really emotional ones are talking about placement changes. A lot of times, resource parents are very attached to the kids and the kids attached to them. And maybe like a relative comes forward and asks for placement and we're having that discussion. So those are always the hard ones. Like we have two really great families that we're having to decide between as far as placement goes. And not a lot of people understand that we really are bound by some laws and by some regulations that we have to make a certain decision. Unless there's like very apparent reasons why not. So those types are really hard because we don't necessarily want to cause a disruption, but just based on the circumstances, we're kind of forced to take a second look at that.
Yeah. And our department really tries to put kids with family, don't we?
Yes.
Whenever we can do that. So
yes, definitely.
But yeah, I know the foster parents get really attached to those children and that's a good thing.
Yeah,
isn't
exactly.
It?
That's what we want. That's what we want from them, for the kids to just be kind of like brought in as a member of their family and get to have all those experiences and grow that bond, because that is the ultimate goal for the kids. But yeah, it does make it tough when relatives come forward and we're kind of forced to choose between two great options.
Yeah, it's nice to have those options, but yeah, it's definitely challenging to see the emotion there.
I'm your co-host, Allison Vota, and I'm interrupting today's podcast to bring you the latest updates on job openings at DHS. Currently, we have openings for the following positions: Human Services Technician 1 with multiple locations and bilingual available. Social Services Worker 1 at multiple locations and bilingual available. Social Service Worker 4 and 5 at multiple locations. And Fiscal Support Specialist. Apply online today at kerncounty.com under the Careers tab. Thank you for listening, and now back to the podcast.
So as a child and family team meeting leader or facilitator, are there other people who do what you do?
There are. So right now there's one other facilitator. We are kind of at a moment where our unit's going through a lot of changes. So our unit consists of facilitators and then also people that call all the participants and coordinate the meetings, schedule the meetings, kind of make sure that it gets off the ground. So right now we just have one other facilitator.
Imagine there's a lot of coordinating with that many people's schedules,
Yes.
isn't there?
Yes, there are. Yeah, we typically do anywhere from like 50 to 60 to 70 meetings a month. So
Wow, that's
all of
amazing.
those meetings have lots of participants that they have to get all on the same page with who's going to be where at what time on what day. So yeah, there's a
Wow.
lot of behind the scenes work that happens there.
Is the other CFTM leader bilingual?
He is not. That's definitely something that we've explored in the past and will continue, I'm sure, to explore in the future. We do have translators, so we
That's
can definitely
good.
have translation available to anyone who needs that. And the bulk of that is Spanish, but we've had lots of different
Other
languages that
languages.
we've had to work with and making sure that we can have everyone in a meeting that they understand. So it's been actually really interesting to
I
kind of work
bet.
with all of that.
So I know you and I were chatting briefly before we started about how COVID has changed the way you do things with CFTMs. So
Yes.
can you tell us a little bit about how that worked during the heat of COVID?
Yeah. So, of course, bringing all these people into a little room is not COVID friendly. So instead, we pretty much instantly moved over to a virtual space. So we use Microsoft Teams, which is similar to Zoom, just to make sure that everyone can be there and feel safe and feel like they're in a place to participate. So they can either participate on like a video chat, or they can just call in with a phone number and use that.
So even people that may not have a computer or laptop, they could participate by their phone, with their phone.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah.
So did you have quite a few of those during the COVID season where we were a little more restricted?
Yeah, our schedule, it took like a little bit of a dip, but it stayed pretty much the same. These meetings have to happen. Ultimately, the decisions have to happen, whether COVID is happening or not. And we have to have these conversations regardless. So yeah, we just kind of continued on. It looked a whole lot different than it did before COVID. But yeah, we tried to make it as seamless as possible for everyone so they could keep going.
And so they're still happening. And are they more live now? A little bit more?
Not so much.
Not so
Everyone
much.
is really happy with the virtual.
Okay, that's
I
working.
think they feel like they can connect a little bit easier. It doesn't take so much time out of their schedule to go to a physical location. They can
Right.
just join however they can.
Mhm.
So yeah, right now we're still all 100% virtual. There are some times with special circumstances, like maybe we need a translator for a lot of people, or maybe someone doesn't have access to technology, and we will have those in person, but they're pretty rare at this point.
So are there times that CFTMs are mandatory or policy driven? So when is a situation, you said placement change, right? Anytime there's a placement
Yes.
change, the social worker has to request one, right?
Yes.
Is there any other time where it's encouraged to have one?
Yeah, so it's well, without trying to like put too many letters together here. So there are some kids that have special mental health services that
Yes.
are KDA eligible. They do have what's called intensive care coordination meetings that work with mental health. A lot of times the therapist will kind of jump those into a CFTM to combine it so that they can make sure to bring everyone together. So we do have those quite a bit. There are certain regulations for children in STRTPs, which are essentially the new initials for group homes. They're required to have them more often to kind of figure out what the step down plan is going to look like and how they can get into a family-based setting.
So just so I understand, with the children with mental health concerns, right?
Yes.
I know you said KDA, and that's like the acronym or something for the reason we have those, but those kiddos that have maybe some mental health concerns, would you have those regularly or only when an issue rose up? Or
So those are regularly. Yeah, that's just to kind of like get the team together, kind of figure out like what's going well, maybe what we're needing to still work on, and just kind of get input from everyone to figure out how to continue to implement those services.
So to make sure this child stays stable, medication or education, all of those things are talked about, right?
Exactly.
Okay. And then with kids in group homes, the new terminology, as you said, was STRTP.
Yes, lots of
I
letters.
know there's a lot of letters. And so our county and our state changed the rules in 2017, and now we don't want to see so many kids in group homes, which is a good thing, right? So anytime a child's in a group home, we have these regular intervals where we're checking to see if they still need to be in a group home. Exactly. Is that right? Okay.
Yes. So the ST of STRTP stands for short term. So our goal is to get them out as soon as possible, figure out if there's maybe some other services that could be available that could help to step them down sooner to a family home. So yeah, just kind of reviewing their progress or what the concerns are, any brainstorming, any ideas of what could be helpful for moving them into a family type home.
That's great. So just to kind of recap, CFTM stands for Child Family Team Meeting. We invite everybody connected to a child to a meeting. You facilitate it, and you give them boundaries, and you discuss whatever the concern is, and then you kind of come up with a game plan, right, at the end.
Yeah. So at the very end, we're very clear of how we're moving forward next. Pretty much it will say like, okay, the social worker is going to call this person by Friday. So we are very, we don't want to leave it vague. We want to make sure everyone knows who's responsible for what part of the plan so that, you know, we didn't just talk in a meeting for nothing to happen. We want to make sure that it's moving forward. So
there's a follow-up plan in place. Yes. And then does someone check back with the social worker to make sure that happened, or does that like happen with their supervisor?
It typically just kind of happens with the social worker. They'll, and really the accountability is on everyone. Everyone was there. Everyone understood the plan and the timeline. So I think the accountability kind of is with everyone, but it is up to the social worker to make sure that they did kind of follow through with those things.
And the families sometimes have things to do too, right? The biological families.
Yep, definitely.
That's good. And so this program works also with other foster agencies. Sometimes they'll be part of it too. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Why do you think CFTMs are so important, Layne?
I love CFTMs. I think they are the most unique opportunity to bring everyone together. If we didn't have CFTMs, say, for example, a decision had to be made and a social worker would have to call the mom and get her input, and then have to call the foster parent and get her input, and then call the school and get their input. So it's like, why not just bring everyone together, have a conversation that can kind of like get all of that real time. And then there's not confusion. There's good, open communication from the very beginning, where everyone can be a part of the conversation and everyone can figure out how to move forward the best.
Do you find it challenging to make sure everyone is heard in those meetings? How does that work for you?
So there are some times where certain participants want to have the microphone, which is fine. Maybe they're feeling like they haven't been heard, so they want this opportunity. There are definitely people just, out in the real world that are more reserved and not so likely to bring attention to themselves. So it's the same in the meetings. But I have had some times where it happens a lot with relatives. Relatives just, you can tell they're soaking it in. They're not there to ask questions or voice their concern. They just want to like take it all in. So those people, I'll just ask them directly, like, hey, you've been sitting here really quiet and I'm sure you have an opinion on some of this. Like, do you have questions? Do you have things you want to talk about today? And I would say 9 times out of 10, they do have a question that they just didn't want to ask.
Yeah,
so
that's good. You prompt
we do
them
try
that way.
We try to make sure that everyone is heard, or just giving them the opportunity. They could say, no, thank you, I'm okay. And that's okay too.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you get to do this for your job. This is a very cool job, isn't it? Like
I really like it.
I was thinking about the skill it takes to be a facilitator, and there's some training that you get, right?
Yeah.
And so do you find that the skills that you have for this job kind of carry over in other parts of your life? Like, do you look at your family and go, hey, let's have we're arguing, let's have a CFTM at home?
That actually just happened. We had some disagreements as far as maybe how we should move forward. So I said, okay, let's set some ground rules. And they all looked at me like, you're doing your job, you're social working. So
that's funny.
But really, it's so the skeleton of a CFTM is so universal. We talk about what's going well. We talk about what's not going well. How are we going to fix it? What's out there that maybe we can have as ideas? And then what are we going to do next? Like, it's so relevant to real life that it is now a habit, but because it's so helpful.
I love it. Yeah.
It's helpful.
I think it's a great problem solving method, and you can apply it to a lot of different things.
Yes.
But yeah, I wondered if at home how that works.
That has happened. Yes.
That's great. Well, I love the model of CFTMs. I'm glad our department has embraced it and that it's part of our daily practice and our regularly looking at families. Is there anything else that you want to share, Layne, about just CFTMs in general?
I think we covered a lot of it. I just would say they're a really great time. The whole team is there. So if there's someone who has questions or wants to know more about something, it's the perfect time because we can have that conversation. So yeah, if there's anyone who wants to go to a CFTM, maybe we're not talking about that specific issue or something, but it's the best time to just kind of bring it all up, get it out in the open so we can kind of figure out a resolution.
And so for anyone listening, can families who are in our care or their children are in our care, can they request one at any time? Okay, they just would ask their social worker then.
They can ask their social worker and we can get it started.
It's a communication tool.
Definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Layne, for being our guest today. I think we've all learned a lot about child and family team meetings and why we have them. It's a great model. Thank you, Layne.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm your co-host, Paula Hernandez, and let's get into today's Mindful Minute. We will be talking about the soothing effects of petting a cat or playing with your dog. Sometimes all we need is to snuggle with our cat or with our dog, and anyone with pets will understand this feeling. Pets can help you make healthy lifestyle changes by providing companionship, helping you meet new people, adding routine to your day, or even providing sensory stress relief. The local animal rescue in town, Marley's Much, shows a great example of how animals can have a great impact on their humans. With their positive change program that pairs incarcerated people with at-risk shelter dogs. This program is both a rehabilitation for the most hardened inmates or neglected dogs. During this 14-week program, inmates learn valuable skills that teach them the power of trust, self-reflection, applied interpersonal skills, and positive emotional and behavioral responses. While the dog learns trust, obedience, positive behaviors, and decreased symptoms of fear or insecurity. At the end of the program, these inmates give testimonies saying that these dogs taught them so much and helped them cope with the hard situations just by the dog showing them unconditional loyalty and love. Having a pet is a lot of work, so if you're not ready for that type of commitment, instead maybe volunteer at an animal shelter. They're always in need of extra hands. Or offer to dog sit your friend's puppy for the day. This has been your Mindful Minute.
Thank you for joining us for the Heartbeat of Human Services podcast today. We hope you'll join us next time.